Thank you for joining me on the Mighty Dragon. Today I'm continuing my Mindhunter Special, and I'm honoured to have actor Michael Cerveris with me today. Hello, Mr. Cerveris. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, thanks. And
Good. You have a.
just to clarify, I pronounced it Cerveris.
I'm so sorry. I have practiced
No,
this all today, and I have
no.
failed.
Well, the problem is that half the people uh, that have said it on record have said Cerveris or any number of other versions. So it's very hard to know. And I have friends who will tell other people, "Oh no, he's a friend of mine. It's definitely Cerveris," and it's not. But
Sorry, could you
so
pronounce it again? How you say it?
I pronounce it Cerveris.
Cerveris. Got it.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But
I'm
I'll but
so
I'll answer
sorry.
to pretty much anything, so no worries.
Okay, fine. I've obviously got some questions about Mindhunter for you, but I wanted to wind it back a bit to see when it all started for you. When did you know you wanted to become an actor, or should I say performer? You have so many strings to your bow.
Uh, well, yeah, yeah, I began well, I was raised by a pair of artists. My father is a classical pianist, and my mother was a modern dancer, and they both chose not to pursue professional performing careers. They both went into academia and became teachers. My dad at a number of universities across the states, and my mom taught dance as well. In addition to raising my brother and sister and I, um, so so I was exposed to all kinds of arts from a young age. Um, and also because my father in particular was interested in interdisciplinary arts and sort of the places where theater and music and dance and visual arts all kind of cross. um, i I grew up with a healthy appreciation for non-traditional careers and non-traditional artistic paths. Um, so so as the first time I was on stage that I recall was in second grade. I was, I guess, 47 years old or so at that time, and it was at the university where my father taught, and they needed a little kid to be in the university production, so I was the little kid. um, and so I was doing that from an early age, and my father would musical direct shows either at the university or in community theaters in town, and I would often be in the chorus or be, one of the kids in the show. And it really, I continued to do that through my adolescence. So through my good lord, uh, through my adolescence, that's what I did. It was just sort of like playing baseball or playing football or something. I did those things, but then I also did uh, theater, and I also did music, which which was another thing that I'd sort of grown up surrounded by. Um, and I went to university intending to study theater and did, but I chose not to go to a conservatory where that was all that I would do.
Mm.
Um, I wanted to have a full education as well. And, and because I had a healthy respect for how difficult it was to have a professional career. Um, I wasn't sure that that was what I wanted to do exclusively. So I thought, well, I'll get a full education so I have a backup plan if I need one.
Right. That's very
And,
sensible, isn't
well,
it?
yeah, and I was encouraged in that by my parents,
Yeah.
who also had, you know, concerns about the wisdom of a career in the arts. Um, but by the end of college, I while I had found other things that were interesting to me, I didn't find anything that was more interesting to me than being a performer, and I didn't
Right.
find anything else that I seemed to be more particularly skilled at either. So I figured, well, I'll just go to New York and see if I can make a go of it. And if I can, that's great. And if not, then I'll go back and explore one of the other things that that I was interested in along the way. And luckily, while it was not by any means a smooth, simple, progression of success, um, I always managed to get some little kernel of opportunity or hope at every moment when I was ready to throw in the towel and when I was ready to say, I've been working in a restaurant job and not acting for 6 months. Maybe I should be getting the hint and get another career. And then I would get some little tiny thing that would be just enough to kind of keep me going for a little while, and then I would face that chasm again at the end of each job.
Yeah.
And in some ways I still do that today. Like, I feel like every job is possibly the last job I will ever have, and it's
Ah,
time to get
yeah.
serious and get a real life. But so far I've been making it work.
Ooh, I think you've had an incredibly successful stage career from Broadway to the West End, and do you still appear in theatre now? And what was your favourite role, do you think?
um well, I would be delighted to appear on any stage at this point after the last 15 months of
Absolutely.
lockdowns and things. I would just like there to be stages available for people to be on, and there
Yes.
will be, and we're getting closer to that. But it's very difficult, and I've been so fortunate that my career had already sort of taken a turn more into television and film in the last, really, especially since. For the past 6 years or so, but
Yeah.
increasingly through the 5 or 10 years before that, even as well. Um,
Okay.
I absolutely will be back on stage at some point in something, I'm sure.
Yes.
I don't have any plans for anything at the moment, and it's sort of, like we were saying, there are not firm plans for anybody at the moment.
Yeah.
Um, but I've really enjoyed the fact that my career has kind of gone back and forth between stage and screen, and as far as favorite theatrical experiences, um, that's really difficult because I've had so many terrific opportunities to do things that I really, really loved. I mean, my Broadway debut in Tommy was pretty ideal, for a kid who grew up listening to the Who and being
Amazing.
an actor.
Yes.
That was pretty amazing. And then
Yeah.
playing Sweeney Todd, which was the first Broadway show I'd ever seen as a kid, then to
Yeah.
get to be in the revival on Broadway was a thrill, and to work with Stephen Sondheim, and Hedwig, entirely different, but also like one of the best experiences of my life. And it took me from New York to LA to London, um, and I just loved doing that. And then the most recent thing that I did the last time I was on stage was in Fun Home, which was another extraordinary show and experience on every level. So it's
Okay.
kind of hard to pick one of those experiences, but
Yes. I was going to say you must be a master of the English accents, really, with some of these roles that you've had.
I don't. I think people around your neighborhood could let me know whether how much of a master I am. No,
Well, right.
I have been attempting them, at least for quite a
Yeah.
long time. I remember I played the Artful Dodger. I think was my first attempt
Oh, great.
when I was a kid in community theater, and I'm sure it was dreadful. I'm sure it was like Dick Van
Dick
Dyke
Van
level
Dyke.
at best.
It's the first
Fancy
name that comes
yourself
into.
at home, probably a bit of that.
Superb. That's
Um,
a really good cheeky Cockney accent there.
yeah, exactly. But it's funny, recently I've been called upon to do it more often. In fact, tonight there's an episode of an American series called Queen of the South.
Oh,
Um,
right, yeah.
and I play. It was odd when I got the job. They said, "Could you do a British accent for it?" And I said, "Sure." Um, and then I got there, and the character and the scene all take place in Germany. So I said, "Well, would it make more sense if I were German?" And they were like,
Yeah.
"No, I'll just do British," because I guess in America, an English accent connotes evil, you know?
Oh, absolutely, and that has never changed, has it? You always know who
No.
the bad guy is,
Right,
like, first
right.
off,
He
right?
may be Russian, he may be German, but he speaks with an English accent.
Absolutely. He was educated at Oxford or something, you know.
Yeah, right.
Uh, when you're talking about, your screen roles, what's interested you in a character to think, "I must do that," I must go for that role or, you know?
Well, I generally really like complexity, and characters who I seem to I mean, at I'm still with theater things, I can be more selective. With television and film, I'm not quite at the same level.
Right.
But I am still somewhat picky, and always have been, even before I really had any justification for being picky. Um, but but uh, what I seem to tend to get cast in are most often characters that either are seem to be irredeemable and horrible and villainous, but actually turn out to have some sort of um, soul and some sort of heart, or people who appear to be pleasant enough, but actually are really evil underneath. Um, and
It's
that
always
kind of
the
thing.
bad guys, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um,
Great.
and I think I'm constantly saying, I could play like a nice guy. I could play somebody's love interest who doesn't like kill and dismember them. I could play,
That's not
somebody's
interesting, is it?
somebody's wonderful dad,
Yeah,
on the plains, but
yeah.
doesn't seem to be how people see me. So, but it means
Abso
that I often am playing the most fun and most interesting characters.
Absolutely. Going on to Mindhunter, it's been an absolutely huge success. What do you think was um, what was it about that series that made it so unique?
Well, of course, just the subject matter is endlessly fascinating to people, and to look at the whole genre of you know true crime and serial killers at the point where people were just beginning to understand the idea of a serial killer and actually naming it and
Yes.
studying it. I think that already is intriguing to people. Um, and then the real key to its brilliance is David Fincher and
Yeah.
the meticulousness of his filmmaking um, and the care that goes into everything from the scripts to the casting to the performances to what you see in the frame. I mean, you you don't have a lot of television that treats each episode like a film and not just sort of a throwaway popcorn film, but a work of art. Um, so I think that's what kind of puts it a cut above a lot of other television. Um, the writing is so good. It's so subtle. He's not afraid to pace things very slowly or to leave tons of room for unspoken sections and things for information to be conveyed via a look or via somebody's body language and posture. um, and there's this sort of it's fascinating. It's a overwhelming sense of dread on the one hand, but a complete, like, sexy weird fascination at the same time that you
Yes.
get from the beginning. And I always thought it was so interesting because I watched the series twice through before there was ever any thought that I would be in it, just because I liked it so much. And um, I remember being so amazed in the first episode, in the first like 5 minutes. you have this horrible graphic suicide, and it's really unlike anything else in the entire series. Like you almost never see the violence. You hear it described, which is almost worse because it
Yeah.
lets your mind kind of fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
And I never, I'm always meant to ask Fincher about this, but um, I sort of suspected that because I thought that could turn off some viewers who think, "Oh, I don't wanna see this kinda graphic thing every week," because that wasn't at all what they were going to see for the rest of the series. Um, and conversely, if somebody was, like, totally into, "Oh, man, I wanna see heads explode on TV," they're gonna be disappointed then for the rest of the
Yeah.
series. It was almost like some sort of weird, uh, challenge or litmus test, sort of like, if you can stomach this, then then we know we've got you, and now we're going to subvert all of your expectations for the next several seasons. But I always thought that was such a interesting way to start a series out.
Yes. It's pretty unique, isn't it?
Yeah.
I watched the 2 seasons together in lockdown. I was just, like, completely blown away, and then had massive depression at the end of it because I was like, "Oh, where's season 3?"
Yeah, yeah,
It's like
that's we've all
fingers
shared
crossed.
that massive depression. I would say, learning that
So
season 3 wasn't coming when we thought.
but fingers crossed, there's rumors for season 3. I wanted to ask you about your role in Mindhunter, assistant director Gunn. How much research and prep did you do ahead of that?
I did a great deal. I always whenever I've played actual people, I've always really loved doing as much research as possible. And even when I've played characters that were entirely fictional, um, filling in my knowledge of the time or the place, or anything outside my own experience, has always been fascinating to me. I always sort of felt like if history had been taught to me this way in school, I probably would have paid a great
Yeah,
deal more attention,
yeah,
um, because it is so fascinating to try to really immerse yourself in worlds outside your own experience. It's one of my favorite things about being an actor. So I read uh, Douglas's book. I read a couple of other books that were recommended to me um, about the history of the FBI and the history of some of the murders, um, uh, and that that was the bulk of it, really. And the writing is so specific and so well informed that just reading the scripts was a kind of research in itself. We would start each season and each block of episodes with actual rehearsal time, which is kind of exceptional in the television world. But we would have a week or two of just sitting around a table with the writers and Fincher and any of the other directors, and the cast, and we would read through the script and we would make revisions or ask questions or try to refine things, which served the dual purpose of meaning that when we got to set, we weren't doing rewrites on the day very often. Um, and things had already been sort of figured out beforehand, and you came in much better prepared, which is kind of essential when you're working on a David Fincher show. Um, and uh, and so there was time in those sessions to ask a lot of questions and ask a lot of background and ask a lot of detail information. And the writers of necessity had to be really well informed and well versed in the history of everything. It was
okay.
interesting because I was playing a character who is not a single person, who's not, doesn't have a direct historical antecedent. So,
I did
um,
wonder that actually. I was gonna
yeah,
say, what was your most important thing to portray about that character? But was your character combined characters?
yeah, he was sort of representative of a certain type of FBI agent that they sometimes called a blue flamer, who sort of out of the gate was ambitious and directed and climbed the ladder you know, through skill and uh, ingenuity and ambition.
Yeah.
Um, so not so much a single direct person the way Holt and Jonathan's characters were, and that can be a blessing and a curse because sometimes if you're playing somebody, especially somebody who's alive and who's going to be, have an opinion about things, it can be complicated and it can seem less freeing if you're playing an actual single person. Um, and you always find when you're doing research that a huge amount of what you unearth about a character like that is not useful and is sometimes contrary to what the storyline is going to have. And there are times when you can say, oh, they wouldn't have done this, or this isn't how this happened, or this wasn't what happened. And sometimes that can be the cause for changing things in the script. But more often,
Okay.
the answer is sort of, yeah, well, yes, we know that wasn't exactly what happened, but that's what's going to happen to our version of the person. So you end up having to throw out of your head a lot of things that you learn sometimes. When it's more of a fictionalization, like my character, you can kind of pick and choose more easily the things that make sense with the storyline that you're being given as well. So it's kind of a uh, an interesting juggling act.
Right. So interesting. I
Yeah.
was wondering if there was any behind the scenes memories you'd like to share with us from Mindhunter,
Um,
if you're allowed.
well, yeah. I have a an alarm that goes off that was installed by David Fincher that if I ever start to reveal something that I'm not supposed to, just immediately stopped. Um, I do remember this goes all the way back to when I was auditioning. Um, I've been friends with Jonathan Groff for a long time and Anna Torv, obviously, as well. And when I had the audition, or I suppose it was a callback maybe, um, I just wrote a note to Jonathan and said, hey, I'm auditioning for your show. Um, do you have any advice? Not thinking that he was really going to, write back with any detailed insider info or anything. And he said, one thing I can tell you is don't blink. He doesn't like actors blinking during scenes. And I guess through the whole first season, Jonathan was constantly been being told, "Stop blinking, keep your
Yeah.
eyes open, don't blink." Um,
That's
and
so hard to do.
when you know that, then you start looking at these scenes and you realize, "Oh my God, nobody blinks on this show," or if they do, it's like really means something. Um, so I remember, studiously trying not to blink in the audition, and I guess I was successful at it because I got the job.
And now, gosh, can you imagine if it was for the skill of not blinking?
Yeah, that's what it
In
takes.
insider info there.
Yeah.
Um, Coming back to your TV roles, what's been your most favourite? I pulled out a few here. The Plot Against America, Evil, The Blacklist. What's your
Um,
favourite been?
well, Evil was funny because I never appeared on camera. I was just the voice of this demon. So I was actually I have a home in New Orleans where I spend a lot of time, and I just happened to be down there when I got called to do this. So I just went into a studio down there one afternoon, just made this evil voice for this fantastic looking character, and then that was it. Um,
Great.
uh, Blacklist was fun because it was a fun character. It was another accent, and and it's in my neighborhood here in the Chelsea area of New York. So it's always fun when you get to work near your home, and it doesn't happen all that often.
Okay.
Um, but Plot Against America, I was really proud to be a part of. It's such a, I think it came out in the early days of the pandemic, and it was it it came at such a agonizing time in the world, but also in American politics, and was uh, so it had. the book was written in 2004, which I'm sure will surprise a lot of people because it seemed to be so clearly an allegory for, our misbegotten former president's uh, time in office. Um, and you would think that that was what it was about. It was obviously Philip Roth could see the direction the country was going in, and wrote this film. Um, but I think it didn't get maybe the attention it might have at another time because people were preoccupied with other things, and if they weren't, it wasn't necessarily the kind of thing they wanted to take their mind off of
Right.
what they were going through. But it is so beautifully written and beautifully made, and the performances, especially in the leading cast, are so fantastic. I mean, and down to the kids and everybody else in it, it looks beautiful, and it is a really uh, you know startling warning from a really passionate political uh, filmmaker and David Simon. So I hope people go back and find it. Uh,
Yeah.
After the fact now. Um, and I really enjoyed playing that character. And it's funny because Morgan Spector, who played the father and who I was giving a tour to, um, first of all, it was really fun, sort of feeling like I was a part of uh, his family uh, with Zoe Kazan and the two kids, because we spent a few days in New York and Washington. Just kind of, that was the other thing. I got to film at night inside the Lincoln Memorial, just, and because of the
Mm.
restrictions about how many people could be in the memorial, and how many crew could be in there. There were times when it was just myself and maybe one or two other actors, and not even any camera people at the moment, just standing in there, having it all to
Wow.
ourselves to wander around and visit with Honest Abe. So that was really kind of special, and at that time to be engaging with my country's very troubled, complicated past and present and future, um, was really felt meaningful beyond it just being a good job and getting to wear great period costumes and drive old timey
Yeah.
cars.
And obviously there was Fringe as well for 5 years.
Yeah, that's always going to be one of my my favorite experiences. I loved the character so much. I loved the actors that I worked with, and um, I felt like it was one of those rare genre series that uh, really stayed true to itself and found a really went out on a high. Didn't have
Yeah.
some weird end of the series thing that half the fans are outraged by or disappointed by or just utterly confused by. I felt like they managed to tie
Yeah.
up enough, but not too much, to give the entire series an arc that made sense, so that if you sat down today, as people do, and as I actually started to recently, I thought, you know what, I'm going to go back and watch it from the beginning again, and I'm about halfway through now. um,
Oh,
but
great.
it really, it holds together, I think. Um, and the and also, as a sci-fi geek kid myself, um, I can't describe how proud and delighted I am to have gotten to be the embodiment of this iconic character. There was some you know list of the top 50 sci-fi characters of the last 20 years or whatever, and and September was on there, and I just thought that was, you can
That's very
eh,
cool.
you can take your Oscars and your Emmys and all the rest of that. I'll take that. Um,
That's so cool.
yeah, yeah.
That's wonderful. And my last question for you, as we're coming out of lockdown, or we are here, I'm not sure about where you are.
We
What's your
we
plans
suddenly
now
are.
going forward?
Well, uh, several things. I'm working actually. I'm filming a new series for HBO called The Gilded Age, which is created by Julian Fellows of Downton Abbey, and
Yes.
it's basically a sort of Downton Abbey in America. It's 1882 America, and follows two families in New York. One of which is kind of representative of old New York and old money, and one is this sort of rising industrial class, and I think it's going to be kind of a big special thing. I mean, it's got all of the things that Downton had and all of the below stairs intrigue and all of that, but it also has a
Wow.
particular American element in the ways that it's looking at race and class and you know um, women's rights and women's issues. And so much of what America is struggling with at the moment, actually, the seeds of all of that were planted during the Gilded Age, during the time after the Civil War and the rise of the industrial class, and um, so I think it's going to kind of have a all the appeal that Downton had, but possibly even more. And I'm playing a character named Watson, who is the valet to the uh, the railroad magnate, played by Morgan Spector, who I had spent all that time taking around DC in Plot Against America. So I'm continuing to serve him, and there's nobody I'd be happier to serve.
Okay.
So that's fun. I'm doing that, and and I have roles in a couple of other things, as Queen of the South tonight, and a couple of episodes of Billions, a series for Showtime. But I've been spending a lot of time um, making music. I have a band called Loose Cattle, and we have an album coming out on June 4th that we
Okay.
had recorded pre-lockdown, but kind of completed in the time since. And so we're getting ready to put that out. And when there are opportunities to be playing live, we'll be doing that. But in the meantime, we have a couple singles coming out, and then the album itself, and some live streams and that sort of thing. And my co-lead singer Kimberly Kay has this great podcast called Hottest Hell Presents. That's sort of true crime and spooky stories, kind of based in New Orleans, where she lives.
Oh,
Um,
that sounds
and
good. I'll be tuning into that,
yeah,
definitely.
you should. I think you'd really enjoy
Yeah,
it. It's
yeah,
very funny and very irreverent, but also all historically based and fascinating and weird. Um, and I'm starting to compose some music for them too, so I'll be spending some time doing that.
great.
But yeah, Hottest Hell Presents. I think a lot of your
Yes.
listeners will be like
I'll
that.
leave some links to your music as well
Oh,
in my
fantastic!
blog so people can check that out. So I just wanted to say thank you once again for coming on here and answering some questions for me and being part of the Mindhunter Special. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye, Michael.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to The Mighty Dragon. See you soon.